Good
Go ahead.
afternoon, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. This is Thursday, the 6th of March in most parts of the world, and it's our first Backdrop CMS documentation meeting. Um, the purpose of this meeting is to look at how we can uh, improve the documentation around Backdrop CMS, look at areas that we need to improve. So I think the first thing would be good to kind of look at what the scope is. I mentioned a bit about this before, but it could include the how the documentation site is structured and functions. There is documentation pages, which are kind of more handcrafted guides. Um, and there is code documentation, which there may be well be room for improvement in there, which is obviously a different process to implement. Um, but I guess there's also the wider thing as how do we if we have training material out there, how do we make that um, accessible as part of our uh, offering? How do we make it easy for people to find everything that they need to know about Backdrop CMS? So I guess want to open it out and see if anyone we could do introduction if we perhaps do introductions, and then if you have any particular thoughts about documentation, that would be good. So if we could perhaps go around the room, I'll pick someone and then you pick the next person. So I'll start with Luke.
All right. Hello, everybody. Uh, my name is Luke McCormick. I live in Martinez, California, which is a suburb of San Francisco. Uh, I do web project management, done some light coding, getting to be heavier coding now that I have AI assistants to help me. Uh, I'm super excited that we're doing this. I think it's a huge opportunity, given kind of the state of the competition, as it were, to differentiate ourselves in a positive way. So let's do this. Uh, I'll throw it to Jen.
Joining from Oakland, California. Um, uh, Primarily, I know most of what I know already, but I'm often trying to find links to give other people for like how to solve a specific issue. And I'm sometimes shocked that I can't find one, that either it's not been written down or I can't locate it when I need it. And so I'm here to try and figure out how we can make things more visible to people and make more things available to people.
I'll go ahead and jump in. My name is Tim. I'm St. Paul Tim in Deerwood, Minnesota. I think my two biggest concerns about documentation are one, getting the ability to do draft revisions of documentation pages, and I hope to help push that forward with the content moderation module, which maybe we can use on the doc site so that people can propose changes to a page and then get them reviewed before they get published. I think that'd be a huge benefit. And the other thing I'm really interested in is contrib documentation and how to improve that. By our sort of default way of handling contrib documentation, I think is the wiki for each GitHub project, but I think there's been some interesting discussion about maybe moving, making an opportunity to have contrib documentation on the doc site, and that I think would be better if we could figure out how to do that. Izzy?
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm a freelance developer in Vancouver, Canada. Um, and uh, and I'm glad you mentioned the revisions because the documentation that is available on Backdrop is actually quite detailed and useful. And some of the changes recently with the database in settings PHP prompts us to want to edit the docs, and I was surprised to not see revisions enabled there. And so I would like to see that come about, and also as you were suggesting, where a particular revision can be the current published revision while work is being done on anything new. And there is also the problem on the contribs with using GitHub Wiki. It's not picked up by Google, I don't think, and it's also very awkward to edit with. So I would favor seeing something developed along the lines of bringing it into backdrop.org. So I'm going to pass it on. Well, Nate's here still, so he can introduce himself.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Izzy. My name's Nate Lampton, calling from Oakland, California. I'm the technical lead for the Backdrop project, and happy to be here today. With our current work on giving backdropcms.org a refresh, which I'm very excited about, that will eventually trickle down to our other websites like the docs site. But maybe it's because at the top of my mind here that we're refreshing the content of backdropcms.org. The like new user pathway on the doc site is non-existent. Like we're not using the homepage of the doc site at all. And like where I'm just realizing when you land on the doc site, the first link that you're driven to is getting started, and then the getting started page is blank other than 3 sub pages. And then you might click installing, but then that page is also pretty blank. And then eventually you get down to installation instructions, which is probably, the first page of content that actually has any value. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a big ask, but because it's design related, but making our documentation website just a little more user friendly. Like Martin said, there's lots of different types of content on the doc site, and a lot of it's super useful. My favorite page ever is the form API reference, which is incredible. But that's just one page, and it's not it doesn't get quite the focus that it could. Like if we had something on the homepage, it's like, here's useful pages on this website. We might be able to promote that a little bit better. So yeah, anyway, that's my thought. I don't think Eli has gone yet, so pass it to Eli.
He had stepped away. I don't know if he's back.
Oh, okay.
He mentioned he was going to step away.
Joseph?
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, I kind of agree with Nate that there's a lot of stuff in there that is hard to find, even though it's really useful. And yeah, I agree with the point as well that we don't really have like good pathways for people to sort of find to get into specific sections that they're interested in. I don't know who hasn't gone.
I think that's everybody.
Okay.
That's great. I mean, I think the pathways is possibly an important point, and I think there are. It's probably it might fit into where where you come in, and it's I'm wanting to set up my I'm wanting to get started with Backdrop CMS is completely separate to should be completely separate to I'm wanting to develop with Backdrop CMS, or I'm wanting to develop modules or contribute to core, they are probably worlds apart in terms of where the user is at when they start to do that. It may well be that they start off coming there and they might go back later and say, I want to contribute a module or a theme. But when they come, it should be really easy to find the stuff. And likewise, maybe we could structure it better so it's easy to find developer information too. I don't know how that would look design wise. I'm not. Go on, Luke.
I just gonna throw in sort of the marketing buzzwords that jump to mind is we need to know who the personas are, and I think critically, I'll reword what I heard you say is we should make it clear, if you know or want to do PHP or JavaScript or HTML or CSS, click here. If you don't want to do any of that stuff, click here. And you know, perhaps there's more subdivisions later, but I think it's important to make those two paths obvious.
Yeah, I think especially with there's a lot of terminology in like Drupal that might not map people coming to Backdrop's understanding of like, they're like, I know HTML and CSS. Does that make me a developer? Am I a themer? Am I a whatever? Yeah, so for sure. That's a good point, Luke.
Yeah, there might be a third one there, you know, PHP and JavaScript, HTML and CSS, none of that.
Yeah, I think the two is better because in Backdrop, we're calling our front end developers and our back end developers also developers, and everybody's just a developer. And so I think making that distinction between like, what do you know or what do you not know, and then labeling someone based on it isn't really the right place to go, especially like a lot of people who end up developers start off as I only know HTML and CSS. And so having it be more of a like, this is the same ramp rather than being like forced into a bucket where you're not a developer, I think is helpful.
Yeah. Not defining the person, just defining the task. Well, what you're looking for now.
Yeah.
Well, is it more about what do you want to do?
Yes.
Rather than who you are.
Yeah.
Because you may you can have people who are completely new to Backdrop and they may know PHP, but to start with, they need to get their Backdrop site set up, and that might be the same as someone who doesn't know PHP.
Yep.
So one thing I'd just like to throw into this conversation is that in WordPress, you can go into your theme configuration, and there's a button that lets you see a giant CSS file and edit it through the UI. So I think if we have people coming from WordPress, they might be entirely front-end users, but they might also have some CSS knowledge just because of that one page.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess what we should also consider in doing this is whether within particular pages, when we're talking about getting your website set up, is whether we should be prepared to point to certain contrib projects that might help them do particular things. Because there's a lot of contrib projects that can help. So it might, in that particular example where someone does some thing with CSS, we've got like CSS injector, for example, that can say you're mostly happy with a contrib theme, but you just want to tweak a few things. And CSS injector can be very helpful for that. And it may be that there are other aspects of getting your site set up that, and it may not be part of the core documentation, but we may have signposts to maybe we should have pages that talk about what contrib modules are useful for particular use cases, and we can signpost that from relevant parts of getting set up your website. That's
Yeah,
just a thought.
oh, my mic is working now. I don't know if I want to like flag something like CiviCRM as good, really good documentation, but I think they've done something really useful where you go to their documentation homepage and the 3 paths you could take are like user guide, sysadmin guide, which I think is what you were just talking about, or developer guide, which is like hooks and things that are available for people who want to write code. And I feel like those are 3 really useful pathways for documentation.
Yeah.
So, Martin, where are we in the conversation?
Well, I think we've had quite a good quite a good discussion around the different user pathways that we want to maybe explore. I'm quite interested to have a look at this Civi CRM.
Yeah, I think they have too much there and it gets confusing.
Yeah.
But those 3, like user, sysadmin, and developer, I think are really useful delineations for things that people might want to be doing.
Yeah.
Beware the word user. That's one of those things that means incredibly different things depending on context.
Okay.
Should we like share a screen and maybe look at the
Yeah.
homepage or the docs page or anything like that?
Yeah.
I'd just like to suggest that we not just turn these meetings into all the ideas of things we should do, but also think about how to get them done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am sort of wondering how best to structure this. I'm just trying to find where I can quickly share.
Should we share like a Google Doc or a page or something to take notes on?
Well, I'll share this first because this is the home page, and it's right. We go straight into this menu down the side, and this, whereas perhaps what we need is to move this as a step back. I do think we probably need to think about how we separate this off and what bits of the existing. There's probably a bit of mapping that we need to do to work out what goes under which pathway, and maybe some bits will be accessible from either pathway. When we do some add-on documentation, then if we can work out the best format for getting that on, then that will potentially be relevant across the board. But this kind of thing, you almost want your user pathways, you want your quick start guide and then the getting and then this being your front and center with possibly but with also with a maybe we also want to cover the different scenarios. If you're upgrading from Drupal 7, are you upgrading from Drupal 7? Are you creating a new website from scratch? Are you migrating from another website and want to import content? I don't know. I mean, it would be good to think about how well the beta, the new design for Backdrop CMS, whether that could actually offer a way to make it so we can provide an attractive option for those different pathways.
I suggest that there are 2 tasks that we're wrestling with, and it might help to delineate them.
Mhm.
One is, and what I hear you talk about just now is giving some thought to the information architecture,
Mhm.
how we bucket all the things we're trying to get to, and then the other that's separate, but obviously so tightly related that it seems to blend together is the interface for that. The one thing that super jumped out at me as you were looking at that page is we obviously need since that's the front page of the doc site, we need something better than an 8-element bulleted list to let people know what's happening there. So we need some sort of more informative page. I think the Drupal CMS redesign went too far in that direction. It's all, splashy bubblegum marketing. It feels a little off-putting to me. I don't think that's really our style. We're more friendly, country store. But I would think, a few hundred words and more than one picture on that docs page would do wonders for and again sort of identifying as we talk, probably self-identifying what role you're playing or what role you want to play as you're joining that page, so that you know where to go to. Having the whole tree be the interface like demands the people
Yeah.
understand what it is before they even look at it. So
Yeah.
we have to at least address the issue of somebody gets there having no idea what's going on, and give them some path.
Yeah. Go for it, Izzy.
Yeah, I agree with Luke that we need something other than this list of lists that we see there. And the reference to the Civi CRM docs is a nice example of kind of presenting what's under the hood in a way that is easier for people to appreciate. And then once they get into it, then they'll get into the actual content, because it's the content that's quite good. The lists are a little boring when they're presented just as lists. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
We also have to remember that even getting to this page is already deeper than probably a lot of people find. So there's going to be whatever's here needs to be pointed to from our homepage, just so that people know. Maybe if we can cut it up into like different categories, we could have like an icon for those categories surfaced to the homepage.
Yeah. Yes. And I think there's let's Yeah, we've got that persona that where we go for site architect and which I think includes basically the building it, do it. Yeah, I'm torn between I think some of this is about looking at the Civi CRM. Some of it is kind of persona based, and some of it is what you're doing. So you've got the user installation guide, system admin guide, training guide, developer guide. So I think that covers everything really. But I'm not sure that we actually have. I guess that's where we're possibly lacking in terms of user guide and using Backdrop CMS. What are we talking really about the editor role there? Because if you have a full admin, that's probably where you're looking at the system administrator guide, and ideally people should be building their sites for the general visitors such that you wouldn't have a user guide just for going in, that you should be able to find what you need just by navigation. You wouldn't need us. It's not like Civi CRM where you're doing a lot of operations. You're doing that, so it's maybe we would have an editor guide and maybe we would have the sysadmin guide, but the installation, and that might be where we break down into whether you are creating a new site from scratch, upgrading from Drupal 7. It could even be upgrading from modern Drupal. So that is another possibility. We do have people who have tried and then want to move back, and I myself have ported a theme from modern Drupal to Backdrop to enable someone to move to Backdrop, and we're getting an increasing number of people interested coming from WordPress. So we need to, and if we can have particular pathways for those different things, which I think will naturally also point to the helper modules that are there for that. So the Backdrop, the Drupal 7 to Backdrop upgrade modules that we have. I think there's a WordPress migrator module that would help, and then things like feeds where if you've got site information from another site, that you'll be able to import it in, because I do think that is one of our strengths of Backdrop, that we can do it. I've spoken to a number of people where they're talking about they're going to proprietary systems and they're having to manually enter their site information from the old site into the interface for the new one. So
I think actually I want to point out that I believe you've identified an important user base that doesn't fit into my previously picked out, coder versus non-coder thing. Because like what does upgrade involve? That's
Yeah.
you know, not actually hopefully writing any code at all, but pretty freaking technical much of the time. You know,
Yeah.
it's not light stuff. So I think that's an important area, and one that you want to have nicely segregated. You know, you want somebody that's looking for that information to quickly find it and feel happy they found it. However, if you
Yeah.
throw that information for someone who's not looking at it, you're going to scare the bejesus out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to make sure that people understand that it's there when you need it and not something you need to worry about when you don't. And yeah, you know, that's a information architecture, UX
Yeah.
kind of scenario.
So it is one of the first steps to try and map out some of those user pathways.
I would say personas and
Well, I think that there's an element of personas, but is it more about what they're wanting to do
yeah.
as opposed to who they are?
Personas, you can be a different person depending on what it is that
Yeah.
you're doing. So I don't think it hurts for we might not we probably don't want to, like, you know, pigeonhole them. We don't want to say you are this type of
Yeah.
person. You know, let them choose who they're being in any given scenario.
Yeah.
But I think actually roles is a useful and comfortable you know, concept.
Is he?
Yeah, I don't want to get attacked for this. I hope I don't. But you know, as Backdrop has grown out of the Drupal community, there is a lot of documentation that is currently still available on the Drupal site that is still very useful for people who are looking at doing things with Backdrop. And I hate to think that we have to rewrite all of that as opposed to preserving it. Like, if, you know, I could give you example pages, but if you go to some of the docs, drupal.org/docs/7/ and you get into some of these modules, there's some very well written exposés on how you might want to use something like organic groups. That can stimulate a person's thoughts as to what they want to do or can do by what's been built or that they might build. So I'd like to think that there is a way to sort of expand people's awareness of the resources, not just expecting to redo it all.
Well, I think it was, I know I did a couple of pages, but I think RGPiano did the majority of it. When we were starting to sort of wonder about what might happen to some of the Drupal 7 documentation pages, and I think we've had some assurances that we're not going to see everything disappear overnight, but actually it makes sense to start to put some things on our documentation site so that we've got them there. And RGPiano did quite a bit of work in the copying the database API pages over, which provide sort of a greater description of how to use the database function than you can get simply by looking at the code-based documentation, which it tends to be very unit based on the particular function, whereas the API pages can give you more of an overview, which can help with particular where you're trying to understand the bigger picture of how to put together say, for example, a database query within your module. So I think there is, yeah, we certainly don't want to start from scratch. And if there is stuff that we can reuse, and we do have within the we already have within the existing documentation a place to say this is the original source of this documentation page. So we definitely should be giving credit where we do take stuff, but that's it would be good to have more pages, particularly where we've got code comments that reference a Drupal page. It would be much better if we could be referencing a backdrop docs page throughout all our code comments.
Yeah, well, I think it was Graham Leach who also made a lot of effort to capture some of that, because after all, this is all community effort. Drupal, Backdrop, 24 years, 10 years, it's all community effort that has built all this information. And some of it, even on the Drupal site, because of their reorganization of their pages, is actually a little bit more challenging to find than it was before. So it's not only having the information, but not losing access to it because it's been reorganized and shuffled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was so much written for Drupal 7. I'd say there's actually more. I'd say the Drupal 7 programming materials out there, including things like the professional Drupal development book by John Van Dyke, and definitive guide to Drupal, which was out there. Those books are like much more applicable to Backdrop than they are to modern Drupal. Like you could pick up Pro Drupal development and use it with Backdrop, without. I mean, it's like a version upgrade instead of a whole new system, as it would be for Drupal 8. So, and there's build a module, which was the commercial video thing that walked you through, like,
but I think that's now been made.
It's public domain.
Been made available
now.
free of charge on YouTube now, hasn't it? So
yeah, and it's almost useless for modern Drupal programming, but with like small exceptions, you could use it to learn Backdrop programming, which it's a funny story to tell, right? Like I don't. It would be a little awkward for us to put that in our pages as such.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how we can leverage it.
Yeah.
It seems really tempting. I've thought about maybe, getting in touch with John Van Dyke and see if he'd be willing to let somebody make a Backdrop version of professional Drupal development. You would just have to write a chapter for configuration management and
layout
manager, and the rest of it's mostly errata.
Just another quick thought that might be helpful here is that having a block on the documentation pages, like you see on the Drupal pages, where it says help improve this page, and it gives a couple of links as to how a person can help do that, whether they can actually log in and edit it, or whether there's a place they can go discuss it, or whether they can create a documentation issue. So even just having a block like that shows up on the documentation pages might help move things along.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll capture that and put it in the Zulip chat or somewhere just to sort of keep the ball rolling. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, we should definitely we definitely need to think about the pathways and the architecture and I guess there's building out. So happy to have a go at starting a draft of some of a kind of a pathway map, and we can share that in the Zulip documentation channel for people to build on. Are there any other thoughts? I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So are there any other aspects of documentation people would like to cover today?
Where are we tracking backlog? There's is there a GitHub repo about documentation?
There is
right?
so there is a GitHub repo for the docs site, and there is an issue queue there.
Yeah.
So let me just find that and share my screen. Okay, so it's a backdrop ops and docs.backdropcms.org and then issues. And this is where we have issues, some of which are about how we do the functionality of the doc site, and some are relating to specific items of documentation.
It's very finely grained. Is there any way to define an epic in this world? Meta, we call meta issues, right?
I don't know. It
So-
depends who has admin permissions for that.
In the core
Just-
issue queue, what people have just done is created issues and tag, in the header, tag them meta.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And so you could manually just do that. Now, the other thing that I don't know if this is a permission thing is there are the ability to do projects where you can set up a project and then add a bunch of issues to it. I don't know if that's exactly what you were thinking of, but
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, like let's say we wanted to
yeah, we could
try
do,
to.
I think we can do. I think there's stuff for doing meta issues and having number of issues linked to it. I think that's common to all GitHub issue queues. So I don't think we need special permissions to do a meta issue.
well,
Well,
it depends on what you're defining a meta issue is. In the core issue, we just use a regular issue and we
Yeah,
put a thing on it calling it meta.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm meaning.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there's no permissions for that. If you can create an issue, you can do that. There is a projects tab. I can create a project and you can create a project. Click on the projects tab at the top.
Yeah,
And a project just lets you group a bunch of issues together.
Yeah,
So
I don't have permissions, and I think also I don't have triage, so I do think we maybe need to widen out some of the permissions so we can maybe make a better use of this issue queue.
well, I mean, my thought is to kind of focus it on let's make the homepage experience of going to docs.backdropcms.org, more fulfilling.
Yeah,
And we recognize, of course, that doesn't mean just editing that page. That the edit of that page is more the indication that we've achieved something, I think, than the task itself. Well, that probably is the task itself. So maybe I don't know if that's a meta issue or if there's, if we just make an issue, make docs.backdrop.cms
Yeah.
homepage more useful.
Yeah. I can start there. So,
I think it's okay to just add issues like that, even if they're not real specific. Even if they turn out to be more discussions. As I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in getting things done. So, like tying discussions in this group to issues in the issue queue, I think would be helpful, because then there's like a follow-up place and we can define goals and next steps. So I might recommend in the future that we try to say, like, we talk about things that are in the issue queue, even if it's something like make the front page better. At least there's
Yeah.
a place where we're tracking that discussion.
mhm.
I am, though, also very interested in focusing on sort of specific, like making the front page better still requires like, what does that mean? Somebody's got to sit down and define that, maybe even do a
Yeah.
mock-up or something. And that's
Yeah.
not going to happen in this meeting. So, like,
No.
I would be more inclined to talk about that once we had an idea to react to. We have
Yeah.
some things like adding contrib projects to the documentation site, which is a really specific and practical and actionable item, which might not, is very different, but it's at least something that it's like, what are the next steps to making that happen? Or do we want to do it at all? Because I'm torn a little bit. I'm working on the domain access module right now, Martin. It's
Yeah.
like, should I be investing time in the wiki, or are we going to not use the wiki and we're going to move this all to the doc site? And I'd kind of like to know, where I
Yeah.
should be putting my time.
I think in Drupal they definitely, and there was a number of ways that people could build up advanced pages about contrib, and so things tended to be there tended to be stuff on the project page which is equivalent to what we've got on our README, and then the rest of the stuff was on these other pages. But for the purposes of having the information be able to be found by Google, I think this I do think maybe getting it onto the doc site is the way that is what we should aspire for. But at the moment I'm not convinced that we've identified exactly what we need. I think we need an easy way, possibly we need a content a content type for this that we can maybe add videos that we can add videos to if we need to, that we can easily add code snippets and screenshots into the text.
Is there no media management on doc on the site?
I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think whether we do have any.
This is the kind of problem, though, that's easy to break down in steps. Like,
Yeah.
the first thing we needed, we talked about mirroring content from like the wiki onto the doc site, or creating it directly on the doc site. And if we make that decision, now we've we've started to narrow in on what the next step is. If the next, I'm a little skeptical that we're going to be able to mirror it, or that's even a smart idea, because then we're limited by tools in the wiki. So if we decide, okay, we're not going to do that, we're going to just create documentation and cut and paste it into the doc site, then we need to just see, do we have the right content types? Do we just add a section?
I
Jen
think
definitely appeared, so she must have thoughts.
I think I did make a content type specifically for Contrib, and I think I set up a menu position rule so that it would end up in the part of the navigation we talked about last time we talked about it. But I don't think anyone has done anything about using it, so it hasn't been tested.
Okay, see,
But I
that's the
do think
next step.
that could be, an actionable item would be someone to take some module documentation and throw it in there and see if it behaves how we want.
Yeah, just having a look at it, and the content that I could add it might just be permissions, but I could add change notice, documentation page, FAPI element, and FAPI property.
Okay, let me check.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a specific Contrib page, although I don't, could we just need a documentation page with like a page type or something? I don't know.
I think we wanted to not use documentation pages because documentation pages are in the book, and we wanted some way that people might be able to like search and get, like make the Contrib documentation more useful than it is on Drupal, where it's just like, here's a link of 1,000 pages that nobody could navigate. So let me see what's going on here. I don't actually see the content type on the live
Right.
site. So
Maybe
let
you
me
did it
check.
on a dev site or something.
Yeah, let me check my local site.
Could we have some sort of like term reference that and make terms for each of the Contrib modules that we have documentation for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd certainly be willing to start, like experimenting with a couple of Contrib documentation pages.
Yeah.
If
So
we
would
get
I.
the pieces in place. Stop sharing, nothing really there to see anymore.
I'm starting up DDEV. Okay, feel free to carry on, and I can interrupt again when I have more information.
No, I think it would be good if we can start doing it. I'll possibly look at doing a mock-up for how the homepage could work with a with kind of more visual boxes to help people with what they're wanting to do. And we can that will at least give something for people to shoot down and say, no, shouldn't be that. This is what it should be.
And I suggest another really actionable, I think, small thing. I'm going to share my screen again. Like if I'm on, I'd like to make it easier for people to contribute to documentation. And I'm realizing, like, if I'm on the side, Izzy's idea earlier about a block, like, help make this better. I like that a lot. I also like, I think a really common question is like, I have an idea for an improvement or a change. What do I do? And it occurs to me, I don't see anything on the documentation site about how to help with documentation, other than there is a link here, contribute to documentation, that looks like it's all about like API or it basically sends them to the issue queue. And so like, I think the problem I'd like to try and solve very quickly is this one. Let's say I'm doing an upgrade. I'm on the upgrade portion of the issue queue, and I find something that's wrong, and I want to fix it. What do I do? Like, and let's have steps somewhere. Like, who do you contact? Is that like every little change? Is that supposed to go to the issue queue? I guess that's right now, that would probably be what we would have to tell people to do, right, is to open the issue in the issue queue. And is that, and, you know, I guess maybe that's the best we have right now, and that's okay, but then let's tell people that. And if not, if we have a better way, let's do it. Maybe also be real clear about, like, we have, like, anybody who said, hey, I want to help with documentation, I think we've given them like editor access. But I don't know that we tell this anywhere, right? We just wait for them to come and find us and ask for that.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to just have a better policy. So I would start with just a page that's like really prominent, like maybe before getting started, is about this site that says,
Yeah.
this is what we have, and this is how you contribute. So
Yeah.
That's the homepage redesign that I had in mind. So something that's trying to give people the ability to know which path to take, and
Yeah.
it should be complete enough that you don't have to worry about the, you know, you should look at that page and know 90% of the site that you definitely don't need to go to. Like its most
Yeah.
important task is to give you permission to not do stuff, and know, like, if you're gonna find it, you're gonna find it here.
Yeah.
Don't worry about those other 10,000 pages. They're not relevant to what you're trying to do.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's a whole section called add-on documentation.
Yeah. I
We have
saw that
one
in
page
the.
for rules already. Is it rules? Do you remember? Is anyone, am I making this up?
thank you, Eli.
I thought rules already had a page here somewhere.
Can't see one.
Let's Google it, backdrop CMS rules documentation.
Okay, well.
I'm talking, I'm muted. Does anybody have any idea what I just know? I guess not. Sorry.
Yeah.
That explains why I wasn't getting much reaction from it. What I was telling to myself for the last minute is that, at least with my level of access, which is not godlike, but looks pretty solid. You know, I think I have editor access on docs.backdropcms.org. There's 4 content types. There's documentation pages, which are part of the book, FAPI elements, FAPI properties, and change notices. So it strikes me that there's, you know, room for 4 pretty specific kinds of content, and no place to put anywhere else. You know, we don't have pages or articles or anything else for, like, just stuff, right? So I mean, I guess you could put it in, you know, blocks on a layout. It's kind of
Is it possible to
way
create
do it.
a documentation page that is not in the main documentation book?
Yes, I think you can have floating pages that are just like not in the structure. There might be a default. Let me see.
Is it a custom module that sort of compiles the book? Because it's not a book. It's not a book module, is it?
It is book module.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And there could be an argument for saying that actually we need more than one book if we want to sort of separate it out into.
It's not a book. Book module's disabled. I'm like, I thought it was book, but I can't find the book admin anywhere. So I don't know. It might just be regular old menu. like, oh wait, it does look like there's a link. What the heck is this then?
Is the book
No.
UI turned
The
off?
book module isn't even enabled on the.
Yeah, no,
dial.
there's no
okay.
book module.
So it's just a menu?
Menu
I think
pager.
we looked at this recently and it's just like a custom or just a menu implementation.
Yeah, there's a module called Menu Pager that allows you to navigate through menu items. So it looks like book, but it is not.
Okay.
But that does give us a little more flexibility with like what we want to do with other pages. So okay.
I think I'm actually the maintainer for Menu Pager.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I did not know that was an option.
I'm not sure that's what. I don't think that's what the menu, what creates the menu
Mhm.
on that site.
It might be just that it defaults to having a menu link in that menu when you create a documentation page.
Been going for an hour. Do you want to end the recording and
Yeah,
Or-
I think so. I think we want to sort of. I'll just sort of summarize where we are. We're
Mhm.
wanting to try and make sure that we can add contrib documentation in a user-friendly way to the documentation site, and we want to start exploring what the pathways are for people finding documentation. And so I'm going to create an issue on that and perhaps share a mock-up to do that. And yeah, we've got the documentation channel within Zulip for any for sharing anything and sharing updates. And we will meet again in a month's time. 4 weeks' time.
Okay.
Unless that does that. That might actually, we might not be, because that might be Backdrop Live. So it might be 8 weeks time.
Yeah, maybe we.
Unless we have a session.
Yeah, that's a long gap.
Well, let's just do it at Backdrop Live. Have a
Yeah,
session.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, I think we probably would have ended up doing that anyways, but yeah, we'll just call that the regular meeting.
I like it.
You can demo
Yeah.
the prototype and ask for feedback.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, so we have some things to do, and a thing to do, if somebody wanted to do just sort of a wireframe of changes to their front page, that could be a good step forward.
Mm.
But I think we need to go beyond the just like talking about this and start having
Yeah,
a
definitely.
mock-up, and once we get there, then it becomes practical to move forward. But right now, it's just ideas in the ether.
Does anyone else want? I mean, I'm happy to do a mock-up unless anyone else really wants to do it, but we probably don't want is 5 people doing a mock-up. And
Okay. And, and I don't think it has to be really detailed, just
no.
something that kind of, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting, the recording at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so recording is turning off. Bye, everybody.